Anyway, all those seem fine. Those are very typical for the most part questions, some additional stuff, that kind of things, again, stuff I expected to see. I have a short presentation too.
Oh, okay.
It'll take like 5 minutes. And a short little. Very simple roadmap. Talks about things that All right.
All right, cool. Well, we got another 4 minutes until we're supposed to be live, so we're
Perfect. Did you post in Neverwinter Team Chat?
What are you frantically typing over there?
Just chatting messages with Phil.
Okay. Oh, could you share your presentation now so I can grab it?
This is our 2024 release plan roadmap. We're going to go a little bit back history as far as 2023 and going into 2024. So in November, we released our module 27, the Spelltender module. Oh, I know, I'm just narrating. Just giving you so that you can test things out. Upcoming here now in
everybody. Welcome to Driftwood Tavern Presents and our special, I don't know, quarterly, bi-quarterly,
Quarterly,
whenever we choose to do
something along
this,
those lines.
chat with our executive producer, Mr. Brett Norton. Welcome, Brett.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Brett.
It's you. Hi, you're the Brett. It's you. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Got some new exciting things to talk about. Going to do some hype for upcoming Module 28 and talk a little bit about the 2024 plans for Neverwinter and then just answer some community questions.
Oh, all right. Well, Chilled Ferrum thinks I look cute. Thank you very much, Chilled Ferrum. We'll dive in. Let's dive into that presentation right away then, and we'll go through that, and then we'll ask some of the questions we've gathered from the community, and we'll have a little bit of time for questions from you folks in chat right now. But just to remember the usual rules. We don't talk about upcoming content unless we've announced it already. Which I guess if there's stuff in the presentation that we're announcing, then you can ask about that. Questions that are just requests for a thing, we're not going to really ask about that or answer it. Like if your question is just, can I get this specific sword I like from this source book, we're not really going to talk about that. Number 3, questions that are phrased blank when will of course be mocked mercilessly. So
Yeah.
with all that in mind, let's dive into this presentation. Take us through, Brett. Here
Sure.
we are. We
And
can
I'll,
see the
I'll
big dragon right
preemptively
now.
answer all of the questions. No, we currently do not have any plans for updating PvP in Neverwinter, since that
Okay.
has come up in virtually every stream.
Okay.
All right, moving on now.
They're gonna ask again because they're gonna come in late,
probably.
and
Exactly. So we'll talk a little bit about our sort of 2024 release plan, aka roadmap. Kind of use those terms a little bit interchangeably, but kind of looking at our calendar here. So here's hopefully I did this correctly. We got our 2023 and into 2024 right now. In November of last year, we released Module 27, which is our Spelljammer module. It's been our live module for quite some time. And upcoming here shortly, we have Module 28, Adventures in Wild Space, just about to release as of Tuesday of next week. So hopefully everyone's getting psyched up and ready for that. It's been on our preview service and whatnot for a while, and it's just about ready to come out. But we have been hard at work at Module 29. Most of our work is wrapped on Module 28, apart from some bug fixing and balance changes and other small things. But Module 29 is actually going to be a bit of a shorter gap than what we had between 27 and 28, and will be coming out not too far in the near future. And then we still have our sort of normal slate of events that we put out. Obviously, we've just got through with April Fowls. We do have Day of the Dungeon Master coming. The sizing and that's a little bit off, but that'll be launching almost the exact same time as Adventures in Wild Space. So there'll be a lot to do in Neverwinter here in late April. And then over the summer, we'll have upcoming the Anniversary, the Summer Festival, and as we start getting into fall, we have Hell Pit and all traditional ones. Events like Wonders of Gone and whatnot will also be in there too. Celebration of Lyra, all the things that we've traditionally done. So none of that's a big surprising change, but so you can expect all those to still be on the 2024 calendar. I want to take a quick moment to show off our awesome Module 28 key art. It's the same artist that we've been using for the past few modules, and the key art that they make is absolutely fantastic. That's really cool. Yeah, it's a shot that you're looking at Vokath's base from the deck of the Moondancer. Vokath's base figures very centrally into the story and content for Module 28. So if you haven't had a chance to see the previews, there's some stuff that our content creators have done. But it's an awesome, cool little area. Sends you out on some missions, and Vokath's Arena of Blood is located there. But let's get in, and we'll do a quick recap now of what's upcoming in Module 28. So, as noted, it's coming out here in April. Actually, next Tuesday is the current date, if everything goes smoothly. Quick module summary. It's the conclusion of our Xerixian storyline. It's the end sort of the storyline that was started with Module 27, focuses on the Xerixian Empire and everything. I won't want to re-spoil it for those of you who hadn't played through all the way through Module 27. But we have new wild space...
something to do with light.
Yes. We have new wild space landing spots. We'll be expanding our current sort of wild space map with additional new spheres, new places to go, etc. There's doom spaces being added, all kinds of stuff. And we had mentioned we have Vokath's base and Vokath's Arena Blood. And Vokath's Arena Blood is a cool new sort of little sub-content feature where you can sort of take on endless waves to see how far you can get. It's something that we've kind of wanted to do for a long time in Neverwinter and are finally getting a chance to do it. But it's an awesome, fun little feature, and hopefully the community will turn to it and they'll get a chance to see who can push the farthest through it. It gets really challenging later on.
I'm really excited to see what the highest level somebody gets in that is.
Yeah.
Send me the YouTube videos when you get there.
This is gonna be super cool. And then of course we have a brand new dungeon, the Imperial Citadel dungeon, where you'll finally get to go toe to toe with the Xerixian Empire and fight to save Toril. So kind of concluding our module here with the big dungeon. There'll be our sort of traditional 3 difficulties we've got with that. We'll have a normal version for random queues, an advanced version, and then the master version for the people that want a very serious challenge. And then we've got a few additional features that are lined up. We've talked this about a lot, but we are doing a change to how mount collars are refined. Mount collars will become much cheaper to refine with Module 28. The costs for the legendary and mythic ranks will be going down substantially. We felt for a while that players didn't, have enough access to those, and that it was, we saw sort of like, how many players had actually upgraded to those, and it was so small that we wanted to put more value in this. So mount collars will be getting a significant refinement cost reduction, and hopefully we'll see more players upgrading to legendary and mythic as a result. We have added a new enchantment rank, the celestial rank for enchantments, which goes beyond mythic. And yes, some people have questioned, does that hint that future things might have celestial ranks? Absolutely. But similar to how mythic was rolled out, it'll be something that we consider doing over time. And then an awesome new thing too is basically just free new rewards, is that we have battle pass repeatable tasks, sort of similar to how when your character reaches level 20 you can sort of get these free progression updates as you sort of earn XP and by doing quests and whatnot. Battle passes now have a very similar reward track when you complete a season. So if you finish all the static rewards, say for like the first season here in module 28, a new repeatable task will open up at the end of that you can do until the start of the next season. So it's a great way to earn additional rewards if you're continuing to do sort of your daily missions for the battle pass even after you've completed all the static rewards. Now you can get sort of new additional rewards, and it's a lot of good stuff. Things like mountain companion upgrade tokens, a lot of good progression materials that for fans that like to play a lot of Neverwinter, this would be great for them. And we are getting close to having having our pass on sort of all of our what we consider underperforming paragons. The Ranger Warden is seeing a lot of its updates go live with Module 28. Is a substantial increase to it's a DPS paragon, so it's a substantial increase to the DPS output of the Ranger Warden. In a number of cases, we've revised a number of abilities. We've actually cleaned up a couple of core Hunter abilities in that pass as well. We made a few small tweaks to the Hunter to improve it as well. And then, like I said, some base Ranger powers also got some nice quality of life tweaks to make it a little bit better. But the Warden's been updated quite a lot and should hopefully be far more viable for a lot of the very challenging endgame content that we do. And we're happy with that. That's not to say that there aren't other classes that we would like to make some changes, and that's not to say there aren't additional balance changes we'll make, but this sort of marks a landmark where we've had a chance to finally hit what we think were the number of significantly underperforming paragons in Neverwinter. And I know that from playing and listening to the community and seeing what we get from our various reports on endgame content, that we had a number of paragons that were extremely challenging or sometimes virtually never seen in some of our data, and that was a big concern. And Warden's been one of the ones on there, and it was sort of one of the last ones too that we felt that we really needed to hit. So we're glad to have to see representation from all the paragons now, hopefully in endgame content. That doesn't mean that some paragons aren't viewed as stronger than others, especially in classes that have 2 DPS paragons. But at least we feel that we have viability now in all the paragons for sort of competing in endgame content. That's not something that we've necessarily had before. So a big update. Expect still though more class updates to come, but we're glad that we've kind of finally hit this key point.
Quickly,
Go ahead.
just jumping on Picaresca, I promised that I would mock people who did the blank when questions, so now I must mock you. Mock, haha, mock. You have been mocked. All right, cool. I just was waiting for a brief moment for Brett to take a breath. I don't know if he actually breathes. Please continue, sir.
Certainly can. Just trying to cram in as much as you can.
I know.
All right. So now, Module 29. All images and things that you might see here are placeholder. We have not announced or showcased anything. And so once again, the disclaimer will sit there at the bottom too. This is not everything in the module, just some things that we've confirmed so far. So right now, we're still planning Module 29 in summer 2024 is the rough time frame. We are not announcing exactly when, but if things go according to plan, it should be a relatively smaller window between Module 28 to 29 than what we saw between Module 27 and 28. The module has been in development for a while. A lot of good portion of the teams are been working it, so there's quite a few things that are already in development and have already been seeing some internal testing. As to the module summary, it is not in Wild Space or the Underdark, so we will not be revisiting that. It is a new block or new setting, if you will. It is back on Toril, and it will be on the Sword Coast, and that's all for the setting that I'll be kind of talking about right now. I've used some images and whatnot. I know the images for those of you that are sleuths was from Rime of the Frost Maiden. It is also not an Icewind Dale, so I will go ahead and spoil that now too. It is not an Icewind Dale
We are
module.
adding a new freezing mechanic, and you will
Yeah,
slowly
no.
freeze to death as you play.
Exactly, and you need to get
No.
a resistance to this sort of frost, this ever frost. No, no, we're not going back to ever frost. All right. But just in terms of some of the features that we've got, there will be a new adventure zone. So it's not going to be something like the Dragon Slayer, where there was mostly instances. There will be actually an adventure zone, and there will be a dungeon for this module. It will not be a trial. I know typically we've often done like dungeon trial, etc., like that. But just due to how Module 29 scheduling and planning worked out, we are actually going with a dungeon on this one. We're certainly going to be trying to do trials, etc., in the future. That does not mean we're not going to be doing trials, but just due to the way this module is playing out and the scheduling for it, it turned out we were going to be doing dungeon. We have a number of significant UX improvements that are in progress, and I'm not going to commit to any specific one, but actually
UX
the funny
means
thing,
user experience for people who don't
sorry,
know
yes,
that.
user experience and also interface updates. A few of these have been in heavy development throughout all of Module 28 as well, and actually a number of these will be seen live in Neverwinter between Module 28 and 29. I'm not going to specify which ones because there are certainly some technical dependencies on exactly what those are, but you can expect to see some very nice quality of life usability improvements to the UI and UX between Module 28 and 29, and then more also released with 29. There's a couple that I'm super excited for, but there's a few bugs, and so we didn't want to push them live just yet until we were very solid with them. But we'll make a big deal about them, and I'm hoping that they'll come out just anywhere from a couple of weeks to maybe a month, but after we get Module 28 out. But for now, we want to make sure we had a nice stable Module 28 build and didn't want to risk putting things. But some of them are really cool, and as a player, I'm super happy for them because they're things I've wanted in the game for a very long time.
It's very nice to have a player as your executive producer.
Yeah. Module 30, which was not shown on the calendar, is still slated, and it has a tentative release date right now of winter 2024. But there is nothing formally to announce on it. The setting, features, content, everything about that is still in very early planning stages. The team is not focused on Module 30. We are focused pretty much exclusively on Module 29 and then final support for Module 28. And as I mentioned, some of the things that are coming out between those. So there's not really any news on Module 30 other than that, yes, we are planning for, and there's already some initial sort of goal setting that's being done for it. But we don't have enough even for we haven't picked out are we going to do a trial or dungeon? We don't know. None of that stuff's been decided yet. It's more or less been just trying to book things on the calendar. So, but to perhaps settle people's concerns, will there be Module 30? Yes, there's expected to be a Module 30 for Neverwinter, but no, we don't have anything cool or interesting to share on it just yet.
And the piece of art you used for that was chosen randomly?
Random, yeah, I just thought it was a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
cool treasure chest thing that looked
Okay,
like maybe
cool.
part of Gauntlegrim or something along those
Somebody,
lines. So,
somebody in the
yeah,
YouTube chat immediately identified what it was and started speculating. So I wanted to make
no,
sure they knew you chose it at random.
absolutely not. Actually, I use that image internally when I'm talking about sometimes business revenue or product presentations. So I was like, like huge piles of loot. So, all right, and that's it. We can start rolling now into the questions
All
category. And if it
right.
won't break anything, I'm going to stop sharing.
It won't break anything now at this time.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you
stopping.
for asking. I appreciate it.
I have stopped, and I'm going to close out of PowerPoint here so I can see if I
All
need to do
right.
some of the
So
questions.
we gathered questions on Facebook and Twitter and the Protectors Enclave Discord. We're going to go through them. We're going to go through them probably pretty quickly. And if you hear your question, but you say, oh, that was not exactly how I asked it, I'm rewording a lot of these, just mostly for grammar reasons, sometimes for tone reasons. But if you feel like I've missed the point of your question, feel free to let me know, and we'll try to circle back to it when we get to the chat questions portion, which will be after this. All right. So number one, the dungeon for the for module 28 did not appear on the preview server. Is there a specific reason for that?
We did some closed testing of that one, and it was due to a combination of just timing and manpower needs for it. It wasn't anything interesting like, oh, we're trying to keep something secret or something along those lines. It was more that putting things up on preview and running sort of some of the closed testing that we do and the internal testing that we do, scheduling wise, was taking a good chunk of time, and just due to issues with scheduling, we weren't able to get it up. In the same way that we have done some of the previous ones in the past. So we're not trying to set a new standard with that. We hope to have more robust testing for the dungeons up in the future, but unfortunately it was just due to boring scheduling issues internally on our end.
Most boring scheduling issues. They
Yeah.
involve Excel spreadsheets, guys. It's bad.
Timing with people being in and out of the office and
Yeah.
some other things that we had to do basically.
All right. Is there a plan to re-add previously vaulted content to the game?
Yes. I'm not going to commit to which ones, but we have talked extensively about some of the older ones and what's viable with some of those things to do. So there is reasonable expectation that something like that will be happening in the, I will say, near future. And we'll probably see some updates to some of those things. And we've looked at some stuff, like I mentioned CTAs quite a lot. And it's something we would like to do. I'd specifically like to bring back some of the more skirmishes, considering that we haven't added a new skirmish in a while, and I'm a fan of skirmishes myself. I would hopefully we'll be able to chance to perhaps unvault some of those old CTAs, in particular, one of the ones that played better, and bring them back.
All right. Where are we? We talked a little bit about this in the presentation, but where are we at with class refresh slash balancing? Are there plans to adjust other classes that have not been balanced slash refreshed in the recent round of
Yes.
changes? And they specifically call out Warlock Hellbringer.
I hinted at this when I talked about, sort of the paragons and what we've done. There are certainly still classes that need more updates, and we're aware that Hellbringer is one of them. Cleric, both the Devout and Arbiter, we would like to hit as well too. Those are the ones that I think have had the overall sort of least amount of attention to some degree. Fighter, Vanguard, we got the Dreadnought DPS, but the Fighter Vanguard needs some attention too. So there's still a few paragons that we would like to do work on. But the good news is that based especially on the data that we've seen and how classes are playing, that most of these classes are competitively viable enough that we feel that they could complete all of the master content. To be blunt, we have seen problems with some of our paragons where we felt that if you had a team of only X being your tank, your healer, or your DPS, it would be extremely challenging, if not sometimes impossible, to complete some of the hardest content in the game. And we don't like that. We don't like it. You should be able to form a team of something silly like nothing but fighter dreadnoughts for your DPS, fighter vanguards for your tanks, and like devout clerics for your healers, and still be able to complete all the content if it came down to it's we want to ensure that players don't feel like they picked the wrong class when they made their character 9 months ago, kind of thing. We want to ensure that they feel like they have fun and viable options for whatever it is that they're doing. And with the Warden updates, we feel that we've hit a point where hopefully all of the classes are viable. And again, that's not ideal. Like obviously for super hard master content, you'll still want to mix and match classes to mix and max buffs and debuffs in particular. But we feel that we've hit a much better spot now with that. But as noted, there's still several paragons that would appreciate a lot of love. Again, like we feel like the Hellbringer, we feel like the Vanguard, we feel like the Devout and Arbiter are probably the ones that are in that category.
Shockingly, chat is full of people asking you to buff the class they play. Just the one they play, nobody else.
Yeah.
Garlax, I appreciate the offer. What I want you to do, if you want to balance Warlock yourself, is to submit a spreadsheet of all of the changes and then format it for our in-game engine. I'm not going to tell you how.
If we tackle, say, Warlock and things like that, we'll do sort of what we've done in the past.
Yeah,
Open up
we'll get
threads
feedback.
and Discord channels, and we'll put changes up early on preview as much as we can, and start getting some feedback. So
For sure.
But the good news is that
Just making it
Hellbringer needs some love. It has some awkward feats and features and whatnot in particular, but at least thanks to, in large part, how its cooldown reduction works, it has a pretty steady high output through cooldown reduction. So it's an interesting class, and that's something that we'll look at, and we'd like to figure out ways to maintain, but also make it a bit more obvious. Like new players don't always understand how powerful Hellbringers can be, because it's sort of focused on a very narrow set of feats and abilities, powers to make it work that way.
Gazatron89 phrasing. All right, next question. Can we expect an update to the trade bar and/or Reaper's Challenge store anytime soon? There's a lot of older items in there, and we haven't added new ones in a while.
soon is relative. We are working on some updates. We're trying to do updates to a number of things, including, for example, things like the Astral Lockbox, the Magnificent Resurgent Lockbox, the Trade Bar Store. So there are things, all those sort of like long-term stores, appointment stores as well too, that we do for events. We try and do a rotating update of all of those various things. The sad part is that just due to trying to get out all the content and features and things that we need just for the module itself, all the rewards and stuff for the dungeons and the zones, eats up a lot of our time. But we're trying to still make sure we carve out some time to do updates to all of those various forever sources of items and whatnot. So, and we recognize like if we don't update the Reaper's Challenge or the Trade Bar Store, then people don't have anything to buy. So we have some periodic updates. The problem is we're not going to be able to hit them all. Like there's at any given time there's several that we need updates, and we're trying to get better about updating with them each with some regularity. And part of that is actually just trying to improve the delivery mechanisms, because we've had some standards that have made it challenging. Like every time we want to update that, we have to add a bunch of stuff, and we're trying to simplify that so we can do the updates faster, basically, and easier, more regular.
Copy that. What are your thoughts about the /bind command on PC, and specifically how folks can use it to create macros that allow them to do a lot of animation canceling?
So the way we have a couple of macros that are basically available only on PC that allow you to do some stuff that you can't do, for example, nearly with any easy on console and whatnot. As a result, and some discussions internally, we are likely going to move, and I'm not going to say which, and I'm not going to say how many, I'm not going to say what it is we're exactly going to allow and now, but certain commands that are currently that players are allowed to use, not necessarily just bind commands, but other things, will probably be moved to be more restrictive and basically not allowed apart from just like developers for testing purposes. So those will be moved to basically not work for players. We'll come up with a subset of those ones that we feel are particularly abusive, but the reality is we don't want people to spend time scripting, large strings to try to do a complicated series of use and cancel actions on a single key press to try to increase their DPS by 10% on a power. We hope that we have fixed many of the sort of canceling things that allow for truly outrageous DPS or heal or tanking increases. We had some powers, for example, that players figured out how to cancel that you could basically cancel and spam like 5 to 10 times as fast as that they were intended. That was actually more of a problem with the power itself than with the binds. And again, we're not opposed to players like canceling things if they get small benefits out of it. But at the same time, building strings and macros to sort of do the canceling for you is not our intended gameplay experience. It's cool if you use stamina to sprint out of an encounter power animation to try to eke out 5 to 10% more DPS. That's cool. But if you're just binding something to a macro to auto cancel something using something else, there's things that you can do with that you can't do when you activate those powers or deactivate those powers manually. So not the intended experience. But that being said, like I said, we hope that there aren't still any powers out there that players can use to, grossly inflate their action points or do tons of damage or tons of healing. Those are usually power specific bugs, and we had to fix those first. Those are the most important thing to fix, because we don't want anything that allows you to do a power 2 or 3 or 4 times faster than you should be able to normally. And secondly, what we don't want is really complicated macro strings that allow you to do weird things, or start, stop, or cancel powers in ways that you can't really do with, say, like a gamepad controller.
Okay.
Sorry, complicated answer.
No.
But,
I just
we're gonna approach it gently. It's something that we like to give players some control, but at the same time we don't want complex scripts being the way to try to play Neverwinter, especially on PC.
Alaskan Druid, don't worry, I am still on Star Trek Online. I am on all 3 games. I am the master of community now. Waha, waha, waha. All right, so previously, and at some point last year, we said that story arcs would be 3 mods instead of whatever they were before. However, with Spelljammer, we've wrapped up the story in 2 modules. What's our reasoning for doing things in a shorter time span?
So with the Underdark, we wanted to plan out and see what we could do with a block, like, a larger setting. And Neverwinter's varied. Sometimes we've had modules that have been a story arc for just a single module. Some of them have been 2. And Underdark was the first one we tried it for 3. And we got some things that we really liked about being able to do a longer Underdark block. But the reality is we also got some negative feedback from both fans and internally about it just running a bit long, etc., and wanting to see some more breakup and variety. So with Spelljammer, we specifically said, hey, let's try for 2 and see how much we like that. The reality is, we're trying things out with Dev. Neverwinter has done, 2 modules in the past. With Underdark, we tried 3 because we felt that we had a long enough story, and there was just a lot in the Underdark, from the North Dark reaches to all the parts of Menzel Barrens into the Demoid pits and everything that we wanted to explore. There was a lot of unused content there. And for Spelljammer, while there's a lot of things you can do with Wild Space, it's not a setting that has been sort of explored as much in sort of the D&D tabletop experience. It's a much more recent thing. That's just the way the recent 5e versions of it are. So we felt that we could do sort of run through the sort of Light of Xerxes style storyline in a couple of modules rather than 3. And at the same time, the community, internally, the devs wanted to try to see if we did it 2 modules, if it would feel more fresh if we shifted up after 2 and give them a break as well. So it's just something that we're just kind of testing out internally. That's not to say that we'll commit to doing 2 modules per block, and it's not to say that we'll never do 3 again. It's something that we'll experiment with a bit, is based on how we feel like the setting and the storyline and the available sort of content that we have to keep things varied and shaken up. We just, with Underdark, the reality is we just felt that maybe 3 modules was a bit too long. So, but that's what we'll try to. But we're not uncommitted. If we find a great setting that we want to do 3 again, we'll try it.
All right, next question. So we mentioned in the presentation that the Celestial tier, we're going to be upgrading more items to that. The question is, will currently unbound items like mythic insignias or collars have to be bound in order to be upgraded to Celestial?
This is a question sort of referring to the bind status on enchantments in particular, but to note the issues with the bind status and sort of the exchange stores that we have for enchantments is unique to just enchantments. Due to the way the enchantment exchange and the enchantment account unlocks system was implemented many years ago when mythic enchantments were first added to the game, that created some complications, we'll say, with expanding things to the celestial tier / rank. And so we've done what we can. We've made some changes over the past few months to try to, update that system. But the reality is that those issues are likely to be very specific to just enchantments. We're not anticipating those same types of issues with anything else that we were to take to Celestial, whether it would be companions, insignias, collars, mounts, anything else that we would do, gear, etc., whatever the case may be. It's, again, sort of unfortunately just more of a unique thing that relates specifically to just enchantments.
All right. As we transition over to Deca, will they and us be producing additional modules?
Absolutely, and sort of is implied, Deca is becoming, excuse me, more involved with the development of all current titles that Cryptic operates, and they 28 was sort of them when they were just started getting into things, but they will actually be involved in some of the module 29 work, and they will be likely extensively involved in the module 30 work, which is part of the reason why it's still in its early planning stages and things like that too. So absolutely, and their involvement will do nothing but continue to grow as time passes.
What's something you have learned in the years as you've been executive producer on Neverwinter?
So it's kind of a loaded question because I've kind of executive producer is kind of like the game show runner for the term that we use, and I've been a game director in the past. So I learned some things from my past experiences that kind of helped me carry forward, I think, into Neverwinter. And some of the stuff is that, for example, there's a lot of things that, based on how I'd operated teams and done things in the past on their projects, that when I came into Neverwinter, I was like, man, I really want to operate Neverwinter in the way that I'd done this in the past because I think it was really efficient and I think it would apply well to Neverwinter. But the thing that I had to get in and understand with Neverwinter was like, how does Neverwinter operate? How have the devs operated in the past internally? And how can we sort of transition the devs from where they're at to sort of the things in the way that I wanted to have things operate and run in the future? And as much as I would love to just come in day one and say like, hey, we're doing it this new way, I didn't, past experiences led me to believe that that wasn't going to be the most successful way to actually pull it off because it would make devs unhappy, things would be challenging. So I took a more nuanced approach and we tried to slowly bridge the gap between how Neverwinter had been run for years to how we hoped that we could have Neverwinter run in the future. And I think that was a big challenge. It was something that, in the past, I basically built my teams from scratch in a lot of cases, or I helped hire a lot of the people on the team. But with Neverwinter, I was inheriting a team that had been around for years, and many of the people had worked on Neverwinter for longer than perhaps even I'd been at Cryptic Studios. And so I had to take a different approach, and I feel that actually worked out, and I'm glad that it did. I didn't know if I was sometimes making changes too slowly or too quickly, but I think we found an okay balance in the end, thanks in large part to the team's willingness to adopt and work, and especially I'll say thanks to the leads that work on Neverwinter and their ability to help adopt change and work with their teammates and work with all the people on Neverwinter to help make sort of effective changes in how we develop. I don't know how much that's obvious to the community, but we actually went through quite a lot of changes on Neverwinter 2-ish or so years ago when I took over the project internally. It took some time, but I think we landed in a good spot afterwards. Sorry, boring sort of production-y internal
That's
answer.
a good answer. I like it. I like how you bridged that gap. That was a difficult thing to jump. All right. What other games do you play?
Yeah. So the bad news is that apart from Neverwinter, I have a couple of young kids right now that monopolize a lot of my time. So I've been playing a lot of mobile games because I can hold my phone around and play it. But the game that I've actually been playing the most separately is a collectible card game on mobile slash PC called Marvel Snap.
Oh God,
It's
that's
reasonably
right. I forgot
popular.
you're playing Snap as
Some
well.
of you have probably heard of Marvel Snap. They do a lot of advertisements and whatnot, but it's some of the former people that had worked on Hearthstone left to work on it. It plays a lot like a sort of faster Hearthstone. But the good news for me is that if you're playing at least in the default ladder mode, the matches rarely last longer than 5 to 6 minutes. So if I have a few minutes, I can play a game on it before I perhaps get distracted and pulled away to go deal with my kids crying or getting into trouble, etc. and whatnot. So, but I actually, the side fact is that I'm actually a long-time CCG player. I've played a lot of CCGs, and I played Magic: The Gathering back when it early came out. I was right around the time they were doing like unlimited sets for Magic: The Gathering is when I first started getting into it, and especially with revised around that area. And I competed actually in a number of Magic: The Gathering tournaments way back then. I was quite good at it, and so I had been looking for some new CCGs to play, and then Marvel Snap came out, and the fact that it was available on mobile first made it really easy for me to be able to get into while still wrangling the kids a lot. I like it. It's fun. I'm not going to overall get too much into it, but it's cool. So I've been enjoying it. And yes, I'm quite good at it too.
Yeah. I was gonna ask what deck you're running, but that's gonna be a long answer. So let's just say, how do you relax from game? Uh, they offer music, barbecue, and movies as
Yeah.
examples.
So there's what I do personally, and there's what the team does. Quick thing on personally is that I actually do a lot of hiking and running outdoors. I was out for a little bit a month ago because I went to New Zealand and got to go down to the South Island of New Zealand and go to an area called Queenstown and do some amazing, awesome hikes. It's kind of in the summer it's like in the winter it's a ski resort. In the summer it's kind of like a hiking slash exploration area. It was a lot of fun. I got to go up and run around for many miles slash kilometers around Queenstown area, and I really enjoyed it. And that's kind of what I do. Even here, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's lots of awesome hills and parks along the hills, and I go up in those on the weekends a lot and take my kids up there. And like I have a jogging stroller that I can push them around in, and hiking backpacks too if the terrain's not great for that. As to the team, most of the team is actually remote now. Sadly, there's not a ton of us that still live in like the Bay Area, which is where Cryptic's office is located. But in the past, we had done what we call a summit. You can thank our CEO Phil Frazier for that. He would organize like sort of week-long events where everybody from Cryptic would fly into the Bay, and we would do these big summit syncs where we would talk about all the projects, Stowe, Neverwinter champs, things that we had in development, etc. We'd meet. We have a lot of great team building exercises, and for anyone that runs a remote company, I would highly recommend that same approach. It worked fantastic for Cryptic Studios, where you have a primarily remote team, but then you hold these either annual or biannual events where you get everybody together in the same spot. You talk about your projects, but you also do a lot of fun team building exercises and get a lot of great face time. And I think that is one of the best ways to run a remote company. It's what I would have done if I had been in probably Phil's shoes as well too. And I 100% agree with how he operated that. And it's a great way to sort of maintain personal relationships while still being mostly remote.
Cool. All right. Do we know? Do we have any news on when the Deca team will start to introduce themselves?
Probably sometime in the next 6 months is my guess. I don't have an exact time frame for it, but I figure sometime they'll as they kind of get warmed up. But they're a lot of they wanted to make sure that they were warmed up on all of Cryptic's titles. That's more of a question across like all of Cryptic's games. But I think that they wanted to get more knowledge about the games, play the games more, look at the tools more, and feel like that they had a lot more knowledge. So whenever they're comfortable with it, but it'll probably be sometime in the next 6 months. I imagine that they'll have to get in and start introducing themselves to the team. And again, that's more of a generic across all of our games. So
Wraith Shadow has suggested a new mount for the game, which is just you pushing the player in a stroller. Well done. I think think in celebration of your Facebook profile picture, it should be you shirtless pushing a stroller while the baby.
Who is all right? Man, talking about my Facebook profile. That started as a joke. I took
It
that
just
my
keeps popping up on my who you know. So
I took that photo because I was out actually hiking with my sister one day, and we'd been hiking all day and it was super sweaty. So I take my shirt off, and she said, "Turn around, I want to take a pic." So she did, and then she like posted that. I was like, "Fine." As to spite her, I made it my Facebook profile picture, and then it just turned into a meme where I've done like 3 or 4 other hikes, and I just keep updating the photo in the exact same pose with a slightly different background to see if people notice that it's not the
Nice.
same mountain anymore and whatnot. So it's a ongoing thing.
Very nice. All right. Will the departure of former president of Wizards of the Coast, Cynthia Williams, have any impact on Neverwinter development?
Highly unlikely that it would. We don't have any direct contact with people at the sort of CEO or president level of Wizards of the Coast. We have some business people that work with us on Wizards of the Coast, as well as some creative people. But both those people, as far as I know, are still at Wizards of the Coast. Their jobs haven't changed, and they unlikely have any directives, unless the new CEO comes in and does something really crazy or weird. It's unlikely. The reality is that for the most part, Wizards of the Coast like us. They get money from Neverwinter. They, as the owner of the IP, they get a cut of our revenue, and they are happy to get that cut for the most case.
All right. If you could adapt another TTRPG into an MMORPG, which one would it be?
Oh man, so we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Mike and I were like, oh, so I'm partial to old school GURPS because I really liked the way that system kind of allows you to do things, but you would realize still you have to pick a setting. GURPS was so
Yeah.
generic. They'd be like, oh, what would you do? Would you do something like GURPS Supers? Would you do something like GURPS High Tech? There's a lot of things you could do with like GURPS Wildcard, etc. But
I
something
wanted
I
to
think
make
has
an
more
MMO years ago where it was a multiversal thing where you chose like a world
yeah.
you started in, where you start in fantasy or you start in sci-fi, and then everybody gets sucked into the same story.
The thing that I settled on, though, and this is a bit weird, the actual old tabletop RPG of Mech Warrior in the BattleTech universe. Not the existing game of Mech Warrior piloting games, but the actual tabletop RPG that was called Mech Warrior, and adapt that into some kind of MMORPG. I just overall like the BattleTech universe and adapting it more into an RPG setting as opposed to a sort of like combat sim setting, which is what's been traditionally done with BattleTech. I think would be awesome and cool.
Yeah. I wish I'd pitched you on Lancer years ago.
Yeah.
'Cause
And I will also say, because I was thinking about this too, Shadowrun. To delve into
God, I
the
would kill
the
to play
FASA
Shadowrun
back
again, though.
history. There,
Oh
there,
man.
I'm not going to say anything, but there might have been a few people, not just me, that have tried to pitch some of that. And then one more I absolutely have to mention, or otherwise I think some people I know at Cryptic would be very upset. And this is still actually another D&D, but it is something that has not been a Dark Sun.
Oh yes.
There's a
Dark Sun
few
would be fun.
people at Cryptic Studios
So
alongside me that would love to do a sort of much more M-rated Dark Sun RPG. But that, it's tough because WotC has tried to make D&D more approachable thing lately, and Dark Sun's kind of this weird oddball,
you have to
not
kind of pull a lot of the
yet.
Frank friends out of Dark Sun to make it more palatable to
Yeah.
modern audiences. I
And
think.
that's the tough part. But I love the setting. It's it's a wonderfully creative and unique setting for an RPG.
Cool. All right, folks. I see a bunch of you, especially in Twitch chat, copying and pasting questions over and over. I'm going to specifically call for questions from chat at the end of when we get through all these questions that we got from the other places. So hold on to that. I'm seeing them, but I won't be answering them now or asking them now. When I call out, I'll let you know right before we're on the last question here, and I'll ask for questions from chat, and then I will ask those as well. All right. What's your favorite mechanic from other games you wish you could add to Neverwinter?
Uh, any mechanic from other games is like a tough one. It's like, oh, what I really like. When I think of like Neverwinter's combat, one of the things I actually enjoy, and I'll just talking about from other MMORPGs, I really liked the combo systems from other MMORPGs, specifically like the Final Fantasy MMOs and whatnot, where they have different powers that link together and would create combat chains and whatnot. In general, I like combat systems and combos. I'd love to see in general more deeper combo chains for Neverwinter Neverwinter's powers. Typically, it's a single combo series of linked powers that you don't have any choices with. But as someone who's a big fan of brawler and spectacle action games as well too, I would have loved to have Neverwinter just have more variety in the sort of at will and encounter powers that you can do within that one, and or even doing something like the combo chains one like you've seen in Final Fantasy or some other games like that. It's kind of a loaded question because if you're listening like any mechanic from any game, it's like well there's tons. It's just,
Yeah.
I love all that stuff. There's if I get but those are ones that I think could be reasonably actually ported to Neverwinter and would fit with some sort of like the Neverwinter combat scheme.
Cool. No one asked me, and this is not a reasonable port, but for some reason I would love to see the Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor in our
Yeah.
game. That would be fun. All right. What is the item in the cryptic office that always makes you smile?
The big old Dracolich in the entryway. There's a huge Dracolich on the first floor when you get into Cryptic near one of the stairwells. It was used as a promotional piece for the launch of Neverwinter. It's awesome. And I got lots of people take lots of photos of it with their family when they come in, and that was sort of like how I knew I was in the Cryptic office because my where I worked when I was going into the Cryptic office on a daily basis always came by that. And so whenever I entered or exited the building, usually the first thing I would see was the Dracolich. And there was a lot of great cool artwork on the walls across all of Neverwinter's offices and a lot of cool swag that they've had up from the 20 years. And I don't have anywhere near that much cool stuff when I'm working here remotely from my place, so I miss all that a lot.
All right, this is the reverse of 2 questions ago, but
Oh yeah, I was
what's
gonna
a
say
mechanic?
Dracolich is also a Pokestop if you play Pokemon
Oh yeah.
Go, and a
Oh, it is
gym.
now.
It's
How
it's
did
a
you
gym.
made that happen?
No, I didn't. Someone else did a long
That's
time ago.
amazing.
So it was really cool. So the people that play Pokemon Go at the office, they have tons of stuff from the Dracolich as well.
Yeah, we would always gather there and play. All right. What's a mechanic or feature in Neverwinter that you would like to see more in other games?
Oh man. So, it's another tough one. And the things that I like about one of the things this is near and dear to my heart. I like the companions in Neverwinter a lot. I don't know why, but I have an unhealthy attachment to sort of like automated NPCs that help you out and that you can select. And I wish you could customize them more in Neverwinter a bit too. And whatnot. And I really like that. And so I would love to see that more. The sort of collectability and uniqueness of each of the companions. I wish we could actually do a little bit more with them, even within Neverwinter's sake. But I love that stuff, and I think that's a great way to expand sort of depth and give players another sort of set of choice. That doesn't feel like you're overwhelming necessarily their player. The companion passive system might be a bit much, but just being able to have an active companion that has different powers and having to pick which one either complements your character's strengths or compensates for your character's weaknesses is just cool, and I like that a lot.
What is the funniest bug or glitch in Neverwinter that you've seen?
That's like a really tough one. Because most of the time the bugs and glitches that stand out the most to me, are the ones that damage the player experience, and I didn't find them very funny, because they were mostly infuriating to me. But probably the one that was the weirdest. This was actually before my time, but it was so big internally that they had to react to it. Was the glitch that allowed players to have these sort of angelic wings that also would animate, but only on like specific classes and whatnot. And it turned out to be such a big deal, and players liked the wings so much and the way we were animating that it turned into this whole, okay, now we got to figure out a way to make this a more permanent feature for everybody and turn them into some kind of mount, etc. So it turned from a totally unintended effect into this, okay, now we're going to have to make entire mounts about giving players awesome animated wings. And that's probably one of the happiest accidents, I think, as far as bugs and glitches go that
Yeah.
Neverwinter's had. That was really cool. And kind of stuff like that. I will say there was also some fairly hilarious bugs glitches with the drivable war machines for Module 19 and Avernus, where you could get into some hilarious stuff if you figured out ways to glitch them out. You could do stuff like drift around corners or slide sideways and things. And I would always just sort of hum the initial D theme music in my head while if I managed to accidentally activate that bug while it was going on.
What's something in Neverwinter you dislike and would like to get rid of if you could?
Okay, so I've made a few comments, and I don't want to sound like too mean on anything, but there's a couple of things that I hadn't been too great on. Number one, I've mentioned this in the past. I'm not a fan of the design of certain companion bonuses, namely the Tame Velociraptor, Feral Velociraptor, the ones that give stacking bonuses based on the number of people in your party that have that companion power equipped. I don't like that because I think it makes for exclusionary toxic behavior in parties and in queue groups. And I wish they had never done it. And I would delete it, except a lot of players invested a ton of time and money into those. And I don't want to. We don't want to, make them regret. We don't want to give buyer's remorse whenever we can. It's a horrible thing when people spend a lot of time and effort upgrading and investing things into something to take it away. But I wish those types of companions had never been put in the game because I think I've seen people that are like looking for player X must have Raptor, and I'm like, no, why did we do this to ourselves?
Yeah, it's always fun to go back and be like, and by fun I mean not fun, to go back and be like, why did we do that? Why?
Yeah,
But hindsight is 2020 as well.
there's a
So.
few other things. That's an easy one. I got a few other things. I'm like, no, why curse you, someone from 5 years ago?
All right. Can you talk about the recent changes to Whisper Knife? Specifically, the question called out the fact that it was sort of buffed and then nerfed again.
Yeah.
What was the process there?
So Whisper Knife was something that we were in the process of making some updates to. We had some in progress changes that we were tweaking and messing around with some powers that, we try to make holistic changes. Okay, we'll change this power, but we'll weaken these powers. We'll buff these two powers, but then we have to nerf this like feeder feature as a result of that. And unfortunately, Whisper Knife, we had to put out a patch to Neverwinter. Due to, I had to go back and look, there was an issue that we desperately wanted to get a patch out for. But we had checked in part of a change to Whisper Knife where we had buffed one thing and not nerfed others, or vice versa. And unfortunately, we're like, okay, well, unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with this. So Whisper Knife will be overpowered for a bit because we need to get this patch out for other reasons. So sadly, it's mostly boring build reasons and timing of live updates that cause that issue. We don't like that kind of sort of rubber banding back and forth. But unfortunately, Whisper Knife was sort of caught up in the middle of it as we were working through the changes on it. I think hopefully we've done a better job with Songblade and with Warden, being a little bit less whiplashy on those. There's still small tweaks that have to go out to that, but I hope that we've managed to pull it off a little bit better than the Whisper Knife. But at the same time, too, the Whisper Knife was, hopefully came out well. But like for example, I don't think we had nearly as many problems, for example, with like the Barbarian Blade Master updates as well too. So sadly, the Whisper Knife just got caught up in an odd spot, and we still have a few tweaks that we're looking at for like the Whisper Knife because we know that it certain aspects like multi-target, it's very strong. Its single target was a little weak, so there's small buffs that'll be going in for that on module 28, and we'll see what we can do with like some of the small tweaks of the assassin. But the good news is we feel that at least we have the Whisper Knife now to what we consider a functionally balanceable state. It was a very challenging Paragon to get to a spot where we felt that it, had a place without relying on very, very weird, like, oh, if you combine these powers and these enchantments together, you get these weird proc situations, and that's the only reason why it's about. We don't want to do that. You shouldn't have to, a class should be viable based on a lot of its core powers, not on comboing things in weird ways that lead to odd exploits. And that's not, in the future to know, that's not good for us to have those in the game too, because sometimes we make changes to like code branches or other things, like, oh, we go in and we make a change, and suddenly the way that an enhancement no longer works with the power, and if your entire class's balance was built on that one weird interaction, well, poof, it's gone in an instant, and someone didn't even know they were changing it because it could have been a necessary technical change to fix a bug somewhere else within the engine. That's why we very much need to make sure that the classes stand on their own, their core powers are solid, and that they're not heavily reliant on specific pieces of equipment and other things. So that's part of when we looked at like the Songblade as well too. I apologize for the long answer with that, but when we looked at the Songblade, we had that same thing where it's like, oh, if you equip this one thing on the Songblade, it over doubles the regeneration, and we're like, oh no, that is awful. We can't have that be like the norm. We've got to fix that, and so we made massive changes to the Songblade's performance regeneration to adapt for that.
Is there any interest in expanding the skin tones and hairstyles to give more diverse options for character creations? Question was specifically asked for more natural by PSC options.
I've mentioned this much. We want to. Finding time for it's tough. We're hoping that maybe with a little bit of assistance from some of the Deca people, we'll be able to do more of that. But our art director, Christopher Fenton, is very much on board with that too. He knows a ton about various hairstyles. He's done some analysis breakdowns. Yeah, previous game that we worked on, Magic Legends, as well as Neverwinter. He's done the breakdowns, and there's several areas we said that we should try to add more of exactly these types of things.
All right. Would we ever consider true flying mounts, ones that can actually like leave the ground and go up into the air?
No, mostly because much like if you know the difference between like WoW Classic and later WoW expansion zones, our maps weren't built with the expectation of flying mounts, and the only way we could add true flying mounts would be to be rebuild like every map, like Protector's Enclave in the game. We could add very limited flying mounts, like mounts that can hover a bit off the ground and actually be able to fly a bit, but they would have very low what we call flight ceilings as a result, and they would be very limited in some zones, and there'd be lots of areas you would want to fly and we couldn't. So as a result of that, it's unlikely we would do flying mounts. It's not realistic for us to go back and redo huge portions of all our older maps to allow for flying mounts not to break the game. Or we'd have to do things where it's like, okay, well, flying mounts can only work in these very specific new zones and maybe one or two old zones that we updated, but oddly, like 70% of the zones don't support it, kind of thing. And that's just not, it's not a great use of our time to try to get something that specific. We could do something flying, like maybe we built a zone, and similar to how we had those really awesome grapple
Actually, what
points
we did in
in.
Star Trek, they
No,
have
no.
there's a zone where you can fly around in a jetpack.
Yeah. Exactly. We would like the cool grapple points in Dragonbone Vale. We could do something like we have like a fly mechanic for a specific zone. But that's because we could build that zone for it. Or like the cars that we had in Module 19. We do adventure zone, locomotion slash mobility custom things. So we might do a flying mount for that. That would be probably the best way we could pull it off. But it would be tied to that adventure zone.
Yeah, and the reason for that, just in case people don't get it, is stuff like Protector's Enclave. If you can fly up super high, you'll be able to see places where the map doesn't exist, and
Yeah.
that's not an experience we want to have.
Pay no attention to the man
To
behind
the
the
to the
curtain. Yeah.
placeholder behind the curtain.
Yeah.
All right. Would we consider making old content or old mods easier to complete since there are less players going through it? For example, the weekly heroic encounters
Yeah.
quest.
Two-part. Yes. Overall, we do expect old modules to get a bit easier as item level goes up, as players get access to more powerful things. By kind of virtue of that, if a zone was built around, like say, a 60k item level, and now we have 100k characters, it gets easier. The heroic encounters are a bit easier. That being said, we know that starting especially with around module 24, our heroic encounters actually got a bit more challenging relative to where they were challenged in difficulty wise before that, and we know that we likely need to make some updates. So we've talked about ways to try to downscale. We've made a couple of tweaks here and there to actually some of the ones I think in M24 and M25, but we'll keep an eye on it. With the release of the new module, players would get higher item level stuff, and we'll take a look back, starting with like roughly around the Dragonbone Vale area and things like that too, to see how soloable and doable some of the old HEs are. I know at least as far back because I've done some recent, like in Sharandar, I can solo a decent number of the HEs in Sharandar and stuff like that, so I don't need a big team to do at least the minor HEs. But we'll have to check through like Dragonbone Vale and such, and through North Dark Reaches and Menzo to ensure that those aren't ridiculously challenging and undoable without a huge group that you just can't get anymore.
All right. And this is the last question from the gathered questions. So now is the time to paste your questions into the chats, so I can ask them after this. And we're probably only, let's see, what time is it right now? It is 12:23. Okay, so we'll answer questions till about 12:30. So then Brett and I can both go get some lunch. All right. So final gathered question. When are we releasing new skirmishes?
Um, No timeline for that right now. We're going to try to work some in, but as noted, I would kind of answer this is that the crew that has to work on skirmishes is the same crew that often has to work on things like dungeons and trials, and so it's a tough choice between, do we want to do a dungeon, a trial, or a skirmish? In a lot of cases, we lean more towards wanting to do a dungeon or a trial for both narrative reasons, or just like trials offer us these cool spectacle moments. Skirmishes have always been in a tough spot. Back when Neverwinter had more devs on, they would actually have separate teams. They would have a team that did a dungeon and a team that also did a skirmish on the side. And sadly, we just don't have that sort of split extra team to do that. We're hoping maybe with some help from Deca and whatnot, we'll be able to get some of the skirmishes in, or maybe convert some of the old CTAs into more modern skirmishes to bring them and add some variety. But I can't commit to anything like that too. It's speculation, but it's something that we care about. Like I said, I still do skirmishes, and I'm a big fan. I actually really like a lot of that. And I actually did a little bit of work myself to try to fix some of the tuning on Many Coins Bank Heist. But I hope that we can get some more in.
Cool. A quick question that I'm going to answer because a couple people at YouTube asked if we can have more Neverwinter streams. Yes, I would like to do that. The two issues that I'm running into with scheduling streams are one, Neverwinter has a very different content release schedule than STO. Neverwinter tends to focus more on having big news around the module releases. STO is a little more spread out, so it's harder to do a weekly stream. I'm trying to figure out other ways to do it. My first thought was, to just try and introduce you guys to everybody on the team. But part two is Neverwinter developers are shy. They're lovely little shy people who want to stay in their shy boxes, and so I don't want to put anybody on stream who's not comfortable with it. I will work on getting y'all more streams. I just got to figure out what, besides just me sitting here playing the game and answering questions, I can do to make it more interesting. All right. Questions from chat. Katso in YouTube says, is the Gond event gone forever?
No, the Gone event should be back. I want to say roughly around fall this year. So we're hoping we've got it on the calendar. So we're expecting to see Gone back again. But typically we've been running Gone just once a year now.
Nick Hastry wants to know if there's a timeline on the changes we mentioned to Mirage weapons to make them less overpowered.
So yes, we had talked about Mirage weapons in the past. It's on our list of things that we're not happy with right now in the current state of the game. The Vecna Runeboard Wicked Lich has seen some changes that we're attempting to address some of its long-standing math bugs. We know there's still some additional math bugs with it, but the change that will be going into Module 28 will hopefully mitigate some of the concerns of how powerful it is. Mirage is hopefully going to follow at some point a little afterwards. We had initially targeted to try to get it out for Module 28, but scheduling issues internally has caused that to get pushed back, and it's a touchy subject such that we didn't want to do it wrong. But the reality is that for a subset of classes, the Mirage weapons are overperforming notably. It is a unique series of weapons that provides a unique effect per class, and unfortunately not all of those class effects are balanced, and the specific ones are basically it's Bard Songblade, it is Rogue, and I believe Hunter is the other one that have substantially overperforming Mirage weapons. I think actually Paladin's one's really strong too, just no one uses it because they don't have a DPS paragon. But as a result of that, those three classes would likely see the biggest change. Other classes where the Mirage is just kind of okayish, we're trying not to change that. So we don't want Mirage weapons to be completely worthless, but we also don't want Mirage weapons to be a dominating part of a class's DPS. And if that necessitates changes to those classes to ensure that they remain more competitively viable in the game, we will make those changes. But sort of the weird Mirage crutch for a couple of classes is something that we want to get rid of, partially because it's a weird forever weapon that scales oddly, that we want to encourage players to get and try out different weapons in the game. And if you're one of those classes where Mirage is going to be forever the best weapon, that's not interesting and not something that we want to maintain.
Cool. Urkelin and your Richard, who are clearly the same person and posting the same question multiple times from multiple accounts. First of all, my question for you is why? Why are you like this? But my second question for Brett from their question is They say the current structure has the same loot available in advanced versions of quests or things as it is in Master. Do we have any plans to create unique rewards for Master difficulty?
I'll have to double check on that. I can't comment specifically on words, but traditionally we've had unique rewards available that were only available in Master. I can't comment on M28 right now. I don't know I don't have the reward tables memorized. But shoot me a message in the feedback section, like on Discord or separately, if you have a comment on something specific to that. But generally speaking, I believe that the Master content has had unique rewards available to it.
Okay.
If it's not, then that feels like an oversight on our part somewhere. But I'm almost positive that Master has some unique rewards. There is some shared and overlap between them, but Master should have some uniqueness.
Gazatron89 also asked the same question in exactly the same way with exactly the same words. I'm on to all of you. You can't catch me with your clones. There was a bunch of different people on a bunch of different chats asking if crossplay would ever be possible.
This has come up a lot. Unfortunately, the answer is no. The core cryptic engine on which we sort of operate Neverwinter was not built with crossplay in mind, and is very challenging to reverse engineer that onto a game that's been around for 10 plus years now that was not built from the ground up to expect it. That's sort of the unfortunate reality that I would love for crossplay. Would solve a lot of issues and it would be really cool. But it's not something that we're likely to tackle. It's something maybe a wish list item that Deca could tackle in the future. But even that, the complexity of it would be so challenging that they would have to have someone that was really vested into it and really trying for it.
Heather Steen on Facebook asked this question a couple of times when we weren't taking chat questions, and then made a Twitch thing because she thought I wasn't reading Facebook questions and asked it over in Twitch as well. Will the new dungeon be available day one via Head Start Zen Pack?
I can't comment on that. Sadly, I'd have to ask. I don't know off the top of my head if that'll be available. That's a good question. Sadly, I'd have to look and see what's the contents of the head pack and the requirement for the amount of currency that it's needed to do it. You'll find out relatively quickly, but worst case, I can try to get someone to respond that knows the contents of both the head start pack and the requirements for entering the dungeon.
Dear God, 2 more people copied and pasted that question about rewards from earlier. Oh, nope, 3. Okay, how many actually accounts did this person create? 4? 5?
Or it's
6?
just maybe it's the guild and they're all asking the same thing.
Maybe it is. Don't do that. This is a bad strategy. I will only mock you. It won't make. And I've still answered your question without you having to do that. All right. Let's see. Um, would we ever consider making a recruitment event for Neverwinter, like the recruitment events in STO? I don't know if you're familiar with those.
We actually do have a recruitment event in Neverwinter. We just haven't run it in a while. It requires some special updates. So it's an event that if we get a chance, we'll pull it back out. There's like the Never Ember incentives and stuff like that we have. It's not quite the same scope as what Stowe and Champs has done, but we do have a recruitment event. I'll have to just double check and see the last times we actually run it. It's been quite a while. To note, there was some complications that when it wasn't set up to be as evergreen as we would have liked. And that adds some complications. But that's actually a good suggestion. I'll double check and look into see when the last time we won it and see how challenging it perhaps would be to grow that to be more evergreen.
Race Shadow wants to know if we could ever get characters from Baldur's Gate 3 as companions.
We have asked about that. It's something that has come up a lot, obviously, with the popularity of Baldur's Gate 3. But for the most part, we wanted to make sure that any collaborations that we do we've done collabs before in the past, like with Idle Champions as well too, that the people on there are wanting to do them as much too. Like we're not just gonna like grab someone and do it. We've had characters from prior Baldur's Gates game like Minsk and whatnot because they're part of the larger D&D lore now at this point. But we didn't want to specifically go in and just say like, hey, we're gonna make a companion based off this without getting WotC and Larian heavily involved. So we've asked about it a bit in the past. I'm not going to make any promises since it's not directly our decision to do it, but it's something that we would very much like to do.
And we know you guys want Astarion and Karlash the most.
Everyone wants Astarion,
yeah. All right. Okay. Let's see. A couple of people have asked for a question about the Reaper's Trial. Is there any more plans for the Reaper's Trial?
I think it means like the Reaper's challenges. We've talked about wanting to try to get the store some updates in, and then trying to change. We've talked about wanting to change around the modifier system, and again, what the modifiers, the quote unquote modifiers that Reaper's challenge uses, isn't the coolest. It's not as fun as like the modifiers that we have for A, dragon hunts, and B, the hunts in Menzo Berenson and Narbandelian. And we have a plan that we would like to do at some point where we convert Reaper's challenges to use the modifier system closer to what we have in the Underdark hunts as well as the dragon hunts, but I can't give a time frame for that. It's not currently on our block, but it's something we're like, oh man, we really want to revise Reaper's Challenge to use this system because we like it a lot better. Or just clean up the current modifiers that we've got for the Reaper's Challenge to make it more interesting.
How do we feel about okay, cool. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that. How do we feel about the current drop rates for the Master Demon Web Pits and Master TOS, Tomb of something, I'm assuming?
Temple of the Spider, probably.
Okay. People are saying that, well, this person is saying they are pretty low.
They are reasonably low, but we have reviewed them in the past to try to make sure that they were functioning kind of as what we did. They sort of hit what we expect. Over time, as content gets run less and less, we have a tendency to increase drop rates to try to mitigate issues with like, okay, there's this thing that you want for some reason from a really old dungeon, and it's really, really hard to get now, especially as we bring in more new dungeons and more new items and whatnot. And so, especially, Temple of the Spider is actually now at 24. We're going to be 4 modules ahead of it now. So we'll start looking at what we can do if we need to start modifying drop rates just to make especially some of the older content. But as far as newer content, the systems team has sort of a drop rate, obtainment rate, I'll say, target that they're trying to hit. And obtain rate's a few factors based on, completion times and a few other things. But there's obtainment rate target that they're trying to hit with it. And realistically, almost no matter what we set the obtainment rate at, unless it's 100%, players always ask for it to be higher. But to be also very blunt, we have had bugs or problems in the past where the obtainment rate was almost effectively 0 on some things. So we're trying to ensure that we have sort of a consistent obtainment rate that says like, hey, if you run this dungeon this many times, you have a really good shot of getting this thing that you want. And it shouldn't be 100 or 1,000. It should be, sub 50, if not sub 25, that sort of thing. But that being said, if you expect to run the dungeon 3 times, like the master dungeon 3 times, and be guaranteed to get the thing that you want, probably not.
Mantara, I think someone in chat already answered this, but Julia moved to the production team a long time ago when I took over as senior community manager. And so now I am the community manager for all 3 games, and she is producing Neverwinter and doing a amazing job with it. So yeah, let's see. All right, I'm going to do one more because we're a little past when I said we would stop. Karama, I miss her too. I don't get to see her enough. Will we be bringing back the Knox Box event? The one where you trade in your promissory vote notes.
Probably not.
Okay.
The Knox box was likely a one-off event. It was at the time it was run, it was a bit of a test actually for some new features and things that the team was thinking about developing and or releasing. And some of those features and things that they wanted were incorporated into other features and things that were released later. So you can kind of view it as a prototype event thing that we did, and it was not in that form extended out into anything that we expect to run again in the future.
I lied. I'm going to do one more question because I want to look up someone for us to raid with this lovely chat. So,
I can read off questions.
No. Karama Zillel wants to know what your favorite dungeon to run is.
I am biased towards, for whatever reason, the Infernal Citadel. I ran it a lot. I got really good at it. I liked the bosses and such with it. The first boss had a little bit of usability issues, and I'm kind of glad that we kind of cleaned up some of the stuff there eventually. But, it was a lot of fun. It was definitely very challenging. I don't think it was necessarily the fairest. I've run it with people that simply could not do, for example, the tile dance with the infernal engine at the end as well too. But I don't know. I overall liked it a lot. It felt like you could do it real fast, and it was if you knew how to speed run through the pulls. But the bosses were challenging, but they had very predictable patterns. Like so, if you paid attention and understood the patterns and the mechanics, you could outsmart them a lot, and you could do it real quickly in that. So it was a cool little dungeon that I always really enjoyed. It's not to say it's the only dungeon like. Actually, like I said, I really like some of the skirmishes. I'm really fond of both Illusionist Gambit on the skirmish side as well as the Many Coins Bank Heist and a few others. So
cool.
Trial wise, I think I've mentioned this in the past. Tiamat, just because when Tiamat comes out of the ground, it was always such an incredible experience.
I knew asking that one question would give me just enough time to find someone to raid. All right. Nope, we can't raid that person. All right. I'll throw one more question to Brett while I find somebody else. Let's see. Are there any plans to lower the cost of the appointment store? It takes a long time, sometimes as much as a year, to gather coins for a mount or a companion.
That's somewhat intentional. The appointment store is targeted at requiring some of the more new companions and mounts that we put into it to require you to hit multiple long-term appointment event completions. So like if you want to get some of the ones that take like, I think it's 5 appointment events, you can pull that off. Like it does take roughly a year to get some of those. There are cheaper options. There are some rewards that if you want to cash in early on, but some of the items were specifically built to require that kind of long-term commitment, whether it's for vanity reasons or just because some of them were pretty cool, etc. So we tried to have a mix. We did an update to the appointment store costing to try to better cost some of the things like some of the older companions and stuff that we had in there to provide more options. But no, realistically, we have some in there that cost like 5+ currency because we expect it to take a year for you to be able to earn those. We've got enough appointment events that we typically do hopefully have the ability to earn those over the course of a year.
Cool. All right. And once again, you ended the question right as I found someone to raid. So well done. Perfect timing, Brett.
Yeah, right. Just
All
checking
right.
real quick to see if there's any other surprise, useful questions to answer, but I think we've actually gotten through quite a few.
Yeah.
So
I'm good at my
thank you
job.
all for everyone that attended live. I'd like to give a personal shout out to a content creator that I know said he was retiring from Neverwinter, Northside. Thank you for all the cool videos. I had watched some in the past. I don't know if you're listening or watching, but thanks for the being a cool content creator for the community in the past. And for all the still existing content creators out there, thank you a lot. You'd be surprised to know how much the dev team actually watches your videos.
Cool. All right. Thank you everybody for all of the lovely supportive comments and chat. We love all of you, and we will see you next time. Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye. Bye bye now.
See
Bye
ya.
bye. Bye bye. Bye bye now. Bye bye.